is up, and it's good.
You're listening to The Extra Point, hosted by Phil Ruskin. Welcome.
Welcome in. Welcome to another episode of The Extra Point. As always, I'm your host, Phil Ruskin, joined by my good buddy, Kendall VanDerBilt. What up, my dude?
How we doing, my friend? Dude, I'm loving these Dynasty rankings, man. It's certainly a fun exercise, man. I am enjoying it. Not enjoying the weather by me, though, right now, my friend. We are getting... I don't know if we are getting absolutely just demolished here in the northern Midwest here, man. It's pretty brutal. I had to like shovel my driveway multiple times in one day, like a true Bears fan. Not a fan of it, man.
I lived in that part of the country for a long time, and I'm from Florida, hence the hat. I am living in California. I've been here 13 years now. I don't miss it at all. Do you have exploding trees? I heard it was so cold that there was trees that were exploding, which I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm a scientist. I don't understand the physics behind that, but that just doesn't seem like a place man was meant to live. If your trees are exploding, seems like a problem for me personally.
Yeah, a little bit. But hey, man, got to separate the men from the boys somehow. So
I mean, you don't need to be out there with a chainsaw. If the tree just explodes, sort of does the splinter of the wood for you. So speaking of separating the boys from the men, let's talk about some wide receivers. This is obviously my favorite show because as anyone who's ever listened to the podcast or played in the league with me or against me knows, your boy going to draft some wide receivers. I love this. I think this is super fun. It is the way too early 2026 Dynasty wide receiver show. As we do, Kendall and I are going to break down our rankings tonight. I don't think we'll have a ton of disparity, but for those that have caught the last couple of shows as we've gone position by position, we're not going to talk about the big boys because they're at the top for a reason. If you don't know to draft them, then maybe fantasy is just not for you. But we are going to spend some good time tonight talking about some guys in the middle that majority of fantasy, especially Dynasty players, do have questions about. Kendall, break me down your tier one, cream of the crop, creme de la creme, best pass catchers in the biz.
All right, my tier one, it was between do I stick with 3 or do I go to 5? As of right now, I recommend do whatever's useful in making tiers. I had to make it 5 to isolate a range in tier 2. So just kind of hear me out with that. A lot of people I think are going to have 3 players in tier 1 in my opinion, but I'm going to do 5. Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, JSN, and then Malik Neighbors and Amon-Ra are sneaking in at 4 and 5 for me.
Yeah. My tier 1 is almost dead on with you. I have 4 players. I have Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, JSM. I have CD Lamb. I still believe in the talent of CD. He is an alpha. He has been paid like an alpha. And I'll give you this. There's going to be a couple caveats that I give to players tonight as to why I have them rank where I have them. And I didn't do that in the quarterback and in the running back show for the simple reason, target share. We talk a lot about snap percentage when you look at a running back, but there are very few alphas that are truly hogging the snap percentage. The Christian McCaffreys, right? The Saquon Barkleys. I mean, that's kind of it that just immediately comes to my mind in the running back room, right? Everybody's got somebody there who is taking away snaps, who's vulturing some touchdowns, right? Like Gibbs has Monty, Bijan has Algier. So while we know like Bijan's going to be number 1 in most people's dynasty startup rankings, he's going to lose some touchdowns. That's just the reality of it, right? And so when I think about these wide receivers, CD's in that tier 1 for me because, and we're going to talk about him. He's on the poster for tonight. I think there's a world where George Pickens moves again. I do. I think that priority for the Cowboys needs to be to sign George Pickens this offseason. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but that's why I have CD in the top tier here in tier 1 at 4. I'm going to give you my tier 2 quickly because it's the same 2 names you had in your tier 1. I have Neighbors and Amon-Ra. My question I'm going to start with is I have them in a second tier. So I want to ask you this, Kendall. Why do you have them in tier 1? And I'll explain why I have them in tier 2 in just a minute.
I guess my thought process was, so Malik Neighbors is the I think he's an elite talent. And he's just so young. So for me, I tend to fade the injuries a little bit, especially with modern medicine combined with his age. And he played through enough injury, kept getting injured a little bit, but enough so that if I fade it a little more than everyone else, just say he comes back fine. And even if he's bad for like 6 games or something, I think his whole career is going to be fine. So unless something crazy happens, the talent was supreme, passed the eye test enough that I think he can hang with tier 1 players, basically. Then you give me the age on top and what New York is doing with their infrastructure. I like their quarterback. I like their running back. I like their head coach now. So it's just everything kind of lines up either in his favor or somewhat favorably outside of injuries. Similar to Amon-Ra in that there's a great safety plus elite talent. I wanted to separate from tier 2 where there's at least 1 or 2 sort of worth talking about things. And I wanted to group those players that have something worth talking about that feels like a little bit of a crumble or a stain. And I just felt Malik Neighbors and Amon-Ra passed enough of my internal litmus tests to say, I think they're just clearly they're a half a tier above and minimum. And they think belong with those top guys.
Yeah, I had a hard time not putting them in the top tier. I will give you my quick reasons. I love Malik Neighbors. I am completely comfortable with him as my wide receiver 1 in Dynasty and redraft, best ball, really any format. The reason I have him in his own tier, his kind of special tier, is he missed this season. I want to see what he looks like coming back. I believe wholeheartedly he's going to come back just fine. I think he's going to be fantastic for you next year. If he's on your Dynasty roster, I think he's going to be fantastic for years to come. We've talked about Jackson Dart on this podcast several times over the last couple of weeks. We love the hiring of Harbaugh. The defense is solid. New York is going to be a fun team next year to get on board with in the NFL, and it's going to be a fun team, and I think you're going to see a lot of their players rise very quickly up draft boards, both in Dynasty and in redraft leagues. You're going to want pieces of that team. I just want to see it. That's it. I believe it's going to happen, but that's why I put him in his own special tier. It's the same conversation with Amon-Ra. We love the offense. Jared Goff's fine. You know, the running game opens up the opportunities for the passing game, especially in play action. I am not excited about the hiring of Drew Petzing or however you say his name. I'm not. I'm a West Coast guy. Niners are my team, so obviously I watch a lot of the NFC West. I just don't. The Cardinals have been bad. I understand the quarterback play has been erratic, but like other than Trey McBride, they couldn't get Marv established. Michael Wilson made Marv look like a day 3 pick. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's confusing to me when you have a Mike McDaniel out there who they interviewed, why you would choose to go in this direction. And I'm not questioning Dan Campbell. We all trust Dan Campbell, right? I know you as a Bears fan, you hate it, but like you have to at least respect what the Lions do. I
love Dan Campbell. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, right? I just see a world where when I'm looking at the tier 1 guys, I'm saying who can finish as the overall wide receiver 1? Jamar Chase? Yep. Puka? Yep. CD? Yep. JSN? Yep. Can Amon-Ra under Drew Petzing be the overall wide receiver 1? I don't think so, which is why I have him in his own special tier here at tier 2. Can Malik Neighbors be the overall wide receiver 1? Yes, I do think he can, which is why I'm pretty inclined to move him up. But I would leave Amon-Ra exactly where he is at 6 in my rankings. It is not a disrespect to him. He's on a bunch of my Dynasty teams as my wide receiver 1. I'm fortunate in a league with you where I have Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra, so I'm a little bit blessed in that regard. Yeah. But like, no one's going to complain about having Amon-Ra. But again, we have to nitpick. Not everybody can be number 1, and not everybody can be in tier 1. Someone's got to be, in tier 2 and below. So let's get into it, because this is really where I think the questions start. Kendall, give me your tier 2 rankings, because I had a very small tier 2 with just those 2 names. Most of my guys are in tier 3, and you have a larger tier 2 here as well. So I think we'll talk about a lot of the same names in your tier 2. That is my tier 3.
Yeah, so again, just grouping kind of by just individuals I want to put next to each other, and I want this tier to feel like it has a similarity. I'll break them apart and we'll go from there. But so, tier 2. Justin Jefferson at the top. Didn't think that would happen, but it did. Then CD. Then I got Drake London. I can't call him T-Mac, man. We're going Tet McMillan.
Yeah, I hate T-Mac.
Garrett Wilson. Yeah. Rashee Rice. Mecca Egbuka at 12.
You mean Emeka Egbuka?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Gronk. So Emeka Egbuka. I love it. My names are fairly similar. A couple of extra names here that I have that you don't. I also have JJ here at the top at number 7, Drake London at 8. I have Rashee Rice at 9, Lad McConkey 10, Chris Olave 11, and Nico Collins 12. That's my tier 3, but that rounds out my top 12. I want to ask you, Kendall, because we both have him at the top, and he is the first player in the A segment that I want to start with. Do you trust JJ McCarthy?
No.
And that's so is that why you have Justin Jefferson outside of your tier 1 at number 7? Is it because of the quarterback, or is it because I have to assume it is, because otherwise it can't be because of his talent.
I don't want to say there's not other factors, but they're not worth mentioning in the same breath as the quarterback room. He is at the top of the tier, though, for me, because I think there's some guys I think they're so elitely talented where the quarterback play from year 1 to year 2 with certain players might be bad, but it will be different in a way where it will work better for that player. And I think that's at least minimum. We'll probably talk about him in a little bit, I think, but I have Drake London pretty up there, and he has had bad quarterback play for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he had bad quarterback play this season, but it was still quite good. Like Drake London played better than Justin Jefferson did. He produced more with both bad quarterback play. So I think we've seen examples of bad quarterback play with good production and bad production that we shouldn't consider all bad quarterback play to be equal. I think is something I need to spend a little more time diagnosing. What are the characteristics of bad quarterback play that can give it a label more so than just bad quarterback play? That'll be one for the offseason to kind of get done.
Yeah. So I don't trust JJ McCarthy. I wrote this question in here. Is this offense going to revert back to the 2024 offense we saw last year, albeit it was Sam Darnold, who is now, I can't believe I'm about to say these words, playing in a Super Bowl and is the favorite to win a Super Bowl. That hurts me as a Niners fan. It's just, I can't believe that's happening. I don't know what to make of the Vikings, because it is going to be JJ McCarthy. Like there's no other way. It's going to be him unless there's an injury of some sort, at which point you're not getting better. So let me give you some names here, Kendall. You're on the clock. Jamar Chase, Puka, JSN, CeeDee Lamb are off the board. Let's say you are at the 11-12. You're at the turn in a startup dynasty draft. JSN, CeeDee, Puka, Chase, Neighbors, and Amon-Ra are all off the board. Bijan, JT, and Gibbs are all off the board. You are on the clock. Justin Jefferson or Achane?
Achane.
CMC, Justin Jefferson.
JJ. You know me, I'm DiCaprio, baby. As soon as they hit 27 plus, man, get them off my list.
But that's the point, right? All right, let me give you younger names. James Cook, Justin Jefferson.
JJ.
Kyron Williams.
JJ.
Saquon Barkley.
JJ.
Okay. I would do the same thing except for Achane. So I think we're both in agreement here that even though Justin Jefferson's lower in our list, we don't trust the quarterback. If there's an elite level talent wide receiver, let's just assume PPR and let's assume 6-point passing, no crazy bonuses. I guess the passing wouldn't really matter, but I would still take JJ there over those names at running back. If I'm at the 11-12, turn in a startup, I think I would have a hard time if somehow somebody, like, let's just say it would be JT, because there's no way Bijan and Gibbs drop. But I think if it's JT or let's do that, JJ or JT.
Oh, JJ.
JJ over JT.
Yeah. If I'm being real, let's say the trade market is definitively like I know this league. I'm going JJ just to sell him, right, on value. Yeah. But if you're asking me, you have a 3-year hold. Then that's where I'm like, I actually think Achane is going to perform better over 3-year window, right? So throw that caveat in there, but
Yeah, I have some. We're not going to talk about the Dolphins tonight, where we did the running back show last week. I have some questions about Achane moving forward without Mike McDaniel, but we'll get to that in another show. I want to talk about this next guy because you and I both have him at 8. Again, I had a very small tier 2, so my tier 3, but it's basically a tier 2 here. Drake London, you have him at 8. I have him at 8. It's a similar question, right? Kevin Stefanski's a new head coach. Who's the quarterback to start the season? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's like the biggest issue that I think you and I both had 2 years ago when we were doing our rookie shows evaluating Michael Penix was we both said, I believe we both said this. I know Rost and I definitely did, but we said, if on paper You were evaluating pure quarterback play. Penix was the best arm talent, best quarterback in the class. Our questions about him was that he had so many injuries. He's not hypermobile. He's never going to give you rushing upside. So for fantasy, he was older. He was in college for 600 years, right? So it's like he was, and I understand like Bo Nix was older. Like that's fine, right? These guys don't have to come out at, 19 years old. Mm-hmm. But is Penix the long-term answer in a Kevin Stefanski offense to support Drake London? Because as of right now, it's similar to JJ McCarthy. He may not start the season because of the injury, but like he's going to be the guy. So where are you with Drake London, and is his ceiling, this is the question, is his ceiling tied to his quarterback, or is he talented enough to get there regardless?
I think he's talented enough to get there because we've seen it before. Like I've seen him in games where the way he plays football is sometimes, Tet will do similar things. He's just big and he's good at being an X. And sometimes the NFL gets a little small on some defenses. And unless they have some big bodies, I think Drake London's just he can do some AJ Brown stuff every now and again where it's just quarterback immune. Alshon Jeffrey used to do it for the Bears, and we've never had a good quarterback since right now, right? It reminds me a little bit of that, where we used to like X receivers in fantasy because the per touch value of the types of targets they get are just too damn good to turn off for an entire, 4 quarters. Mm-hmm. And I think we see that with London, but he also gets the 10 targets too, right? So high value targets plus he gets peppered. If you're getting those 10 targets in his position with the running back, room doing what it is, consistently moving the ball pretty well, I think he's going to be quite good with bad quarterback play. And I think if that quarterback play gets to mediocre, I think he can get to my boy Tyler Shuck's level of like above average mediocrity, then we're having a real serious conversation about what his ceiling is, right? Then we're starting to get crazy. We're getting, it's crazy. We don't really have that many pure X's, but we're starting to get to Puka levels if he can get that better quarterback play, in my opinion. We thought Drake London had that talent initially. So yeah, I'm safe putting him where I am, even with the quarterback play, because we've seen him finish around this range with that quarterback play. Put an adult in the room, I think we're in good shape.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really interesting team this offseason because Kevin Stefanski's been the coach of the year. He comes from Cleveland, brings Tommy Rees with him, who was the OC there. But look, I don't think anybody needs to sit here and nitpick the differences between the Atlanta roster and the Cleveland roster. It is not offensively. Defensively, it's, Cleveland is certainly the better defense. But from a fantasy perspective, where we care the most about the offense and the offensive pieces, I think Stefanski's got a lot of pressure on him already. And I say that because he's been the coach of the year with a dog shit team. No offense to the Browns fans. I think y'all probably understand what you have and what you don't have in this case. You got Myles Garrett and insert player here. So to me, it's like Stefanski needs to win for 2 reasons. Number one, this is the best offense he has coached. It is loaded. We know who's in the offense. We don't need to read out the names. Y'all are listening to this show and you know who's in that offense. You're also in the NFC South, which is not arguably, it is the worst division top to bottom in football. It's embarrassing how teams can't win the division. It's like, just like take a stranglehold over the division. Somebody, please. It's there for the taking. It is not hard. You've just got to play some good football games consistently, and nobody can do it. So I think Drake London is, I think he's perfectly ranked. I know I don't use that word very often, but I think we have ranked him correctly. Perfect is a tough word for me. But like, he's at 8, and I think that's where he should be. And I think he's probably, if he's finished as wide receiver 5, he had some injuries this season. He had a good season for you. He can win you a week. So I think what I want to just kind of wrap up this Drake London segment with is just quite quickly is, do you feel 100% comfortable if you started running back heavy? Maybe you got Bijan with Drake. Bijan's a bad example.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, you got a Gibbs because you don't want 2 Falcons in that spot. But would you be 100% comfortable with Drake London as your wide receiver 1 if you started with an anchor running back, or you're crazy enough and you want to go, super early quarterback, which I don't think anybody would do. But let's
No, I hear you're going. I am for the simple reason that he's passed the eye test.
Yep.
He is going to be the alpha pretty much forever there. They'll build around other stuff, but the next big player coming to that team, whenever it does, is not going to be a wide receiver. It's just not really going to happen. If it is, it's going to be a great complementary piece that would make him even better, right?
Yeah.
If I'm being honest. So he's insulated in role. It can't get worse. We're talking about how bad it is, right, Nick? Like it can't get much worse, right? So like the range of outcomes is well insulated. And something new that I've been preaching is, if you feel like your in-season moves and your ability to just make 1% good, better plays than everyone else consistently, you want to have a lot of safety in your draft, right? So you want long-term safety, and I'm looking at the parameters that would make up safety, right? A role that's not going to get taken from him, not necessarily any major injury risks of any kind. Actually, he stays pretty healthy for the most part, in my opinion. That position gets beat up a little bit with some of the catches he's got to make, but he's got the role, he's got the targets, and this is all with bad quarterbacks. So he's got some things that can get better, very few that can get bad, and he's at the age where he's in good shape. Already gotten paid, so there's no big things changing. That to me is what I want at my one. I'll take big swinging risks after I get some of that. But I'll tell you this, I'm much more comfortable with, say, like a Drake London, because the organization has quite a bit more stability. Then this is going to hurt than like a Garrett Wilson, which I think is supremely talented. He's awesome. I have him at 10, but there is a million volatile pieces and things that can happen with the Jets organization compared to Atlanta, which isn't a shining example, but it is certainly better than other situation examples for lack of volatility. And I'm going to value lack of volatility in those early rounds.
Yeah, we are going to talk about Wilson here in a little bit, but I've got a player that we need to talk about first. I want to talk about George Pickens for a little bit. He's obviously on the poster for tonight as well. I have him at 15, Kendall. I know in your rankings, you've got him at 17, so we're not too far off on that. The most obvious question, is he a Cowboy in 26? Let's just start there, because I think that determines, the answer to that question determines where we have him ranked. Is he a Cowboy?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I agree. I think he is. So I think there is a possibility that Jerry does what Jerry does and tries to lowball pay him and then he leaves. But I also think that there is a happiness level to George Pickens. He just had his best season of his career. I think him and CeeDee Lamb are homies. I think there's a lot to like with Dak being there. There's nobody else. You know what I mean? Like if he stays, it is the new, wide receiver duo that we've talked about with, Chase and Higgins. When Tyreek Hill was still Tyreek Hill, it was Higgins, it was Hill and Waddle, right? When Brown was a couple years younger, it was Brown and Smith. Like, it's Lamb and Pickens. And to me, I could see George Pickens, I have him at 15, but if he's a Cowboy next year, there's a world that he and CD both finish inside the top 12. So I guess my let's go the opposite direction. Do you have him ranked around the same range if he were to be in Miami? Tyreek, for all intents and purposes, is gone. They need another receiver. Jalen Waddle can't stay on the field. Miami seems like a logical fit. I understand the cap situation's a mess. I'm just kind of throwing out places where he'd be a good fit. Not necessarily the cap situation. I know the cap situation affects everything, but it's actually highly unlikely he would wind up in Miami because of the cap. But let's just say, for that example, that he becomes a player where he's a wide receiver one in a situation like a Miami. Does that change your outlook on George Pickens?
Not as much as I think I would have initially anticipated. Not as much as what I think a lot of people would probably anticipate, because he can be a polarizing player. We've seen it before. He had this meteoric rise when he starts producing, right? Even when he landed, I think a lot of people, we all saw perfect fit for so many reasons.
Yeah.
If he leaves, I have to drop him into tier 3, but I don't think tier 4. I mean, the tier down, right? Regardless of how you have your tiers ranked. So, we'll get to my tier 3, but this is the Pickens, Ladd, Flowers, and I've got some guys above him that I like quite a bit. I would drop him out of that tier into the Devonta Smith, Jamison Williams, Ricky Pearsall. I mean, just naming a couple of names, but guys that have a little bit more. Yeah, this is a category of, there's some stuff. And namely, volume. One of the things he was so sick with in Dallas is that the passing volume is just insane. I mean, Dak throws more passes than a lot of people, right? Yeah. They're in a division that does so quite often. So he goes anywhere else, I think he loses some volume. And I think he's a player that, I mean, he does not act right on low volume. It just gets weird. So I got to downgrade him. I'm not going to bury him. Some people might be tempted to bury him, and he might start slow wherever he is, but the talent's there. We've seen it. I think he'll bounce back even if he starts to plummet. So down a tier, probably not moving more than 10 spots in my rankings though.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us would say what we liked about George Pickens was that there was no target competition in Pittsburgh. He was the guy. He had a couple of those boom. He was mostly a boom bust player while he was there, right? Like he was the guy that literally could put up 40 fantasy points. You know what I mean? And then he could put up a dud a couple weeks in a row. So I think he's a Cowboy. I think there's sticking power there. I think it gives the Cowboys the best chance to win. So I could see him moving into my top 12 if I knew for sure today he was a Cowboy. I have him at 15 right now, and I feel okay with that. So let's get into your tier 3 rankings here, because there's some names that I have in my tier 4. And let's start at the top here as we finish just outside your top 12 at number 13.
Sure. So again, my tier 2 ended with Emeka Egbuka at 12. So tier 3, 13 through 20 for me at this point is Chris Olave, Nico Collins, Rome, Marvin Harrison, George Pickens, Ladd, Zay Flowers, and then I've got BTJ. Still rolling with BTJ.
Yeah, hanging on.
It's close. Ricky Pearsall by the end of even tonight is probably going to take that spot. I'm starting to get pretty hot on Ricky next year. It just everything's looking his way. But for now, we're sneaking BTJ and Olave to BTJ 13 through 20.
My 13 is my tier 4. I've got 4 players in this tier. Tet McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, George Pickens, and Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson for me is the name in italics on my sheet because I just don't know what to do with him. I could see him going 4 spots higher. I could see him dropping down into tier 5, 4 to 5 spots lower. I will give you my tier 5 because that's 17 to 21. So we're kind of at the same, at least range ranking wise there. My tier 5 is Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, Jamison Williams, Rome, and Zay Flowers. A lot of same archetype, same type of player in that tier for me. But let's start at the top since we both have a good feeling about this player. We liked him as the number 1 wide receiver. Well, number 2 wide receiver, depending on your draft, if you had a Travis Hunter take. But I think most unanimously, the wide receiver 1 coming out of last year's class. I liked what I saw from Tet McMillan this season. I don't like Bryce Young. I've made that very clear. I think everyone that listens and watches this show knows that. But I have to be at least respectful of what I saw from Bryce Young. It was night and day from what we've seen the first couple of years of the league. True. He looked a competent quarterback. He made some really difficult throws into tight windows. Having a 6'5" wide receiver helps. With Tet McMillan. But look, Tet was inconsistent as wide receivers usually are, but he also put up great numbers. He finished in PPR formats as the wide receiver 16, got over 1,000 yards this season, 7 touchdowns, 122 targets. You love that. The question is simple. Can he get into the top 12 next year? Can he get into the top 10 next year? And again, not because of injury. Let's assume everyone's healthy and everyone plays. Can he finish above some of the names we've already talked about?
Yeah, he can't. I hate the reason though, man. Like, I think I'll say he can get there with Bryce because Bryce reminded me, especially what we saw from him down the stretch, was a player that with a little bit of mental stability, like, hey, you won a couple games. Now you're instead of being in panic mode all the time, he can develop a little bit of consistency. What I saw was a player that was dealing with his height issues, right? And it's a big issue for him, but it was someone who had learned enough that he's dealing with it. It's not good because he has to deal with it, but he was getting by with it enough to develop some consistency. There were way too many games in the early half of the season where Ted had 4 targets, right? It was just crazy. And even the catch rate was bad sometimes too, because the balls were all over the place. And he finally developed some consistency later on. So I think there's a path. It's not super likely with Bryce. I think a Bryce injury is probably how he gets to top 10, because if he gets injured and all of a sudden they get like a Brissett type of bridge quarterback that's just consistently peppering the one, yeah, I think that happens real fast. So too much to say on Bryce. I don't like his chances to get into the top 10 next year, but just 2 or 3 games with a backup. I think the backup is going to pepper him and he's going to be good. I don't have him finishing outside the top 15. I just think dude, the touchdown rate's going to have to be enormous from that team, and I don't see Bryce putting up enough touchdowns to get him there. That's going to be my take. I love him in Dynasty, but I want to buy him next year, not next.
Yeah, I mean, look, I wanted to look at this because I think this is stuff that isn't talked about a lot in Dynasty shows and needs to be talked about more. What kind of draft picks do these teams have? Because we're always talking about like, oh, who's going to make a big trade? Who's the hot offseason, free agent? Well, what do they need to do? Because at the end of the day, you look at some of these picks, right? And the Jets are the perfect example. There's not Dante Moore going back to Oregon, I think basically means that they're going to take the best player available, the Jets at number 2. I've seen Arvell Reese's name that mocked there. I know there's a couple other positions, but like the Jets need a bunch. I know this isn't a Jets take, but my point is this. I think the biggest question from a fantasy perspective for the Panthers is, do they re-sign a Rico? Are they able to get a running back on a deal? Because I don't see them. They have all their picks. They have an additional 5th from Minnesota. So they've got a day 3 pick, whatever. I like Jalen Coker. I think Dave Canales likes Jalen Coker. I don't know that Jalen Coker moves the needle from a fantasy perspective, and I don't think it moves the needle for the Panthers to win the division. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I do see a world where maybe they use a day 2 pick in round 2 or round 3 on another wide receiver. I don't think that impacts Tet. But I also see a world where they say, look, we like Coker. We've got we've got Tet. There's, a couple other guys that are kind of hanging around in the mix there. But what's their offensive line look like to protect Bryce? What's the defensive side of the ball looking like? I could see them using some of these early, big round picks on non-fantasy relevant players, which just further cements Tet and his target share. And even though I don't like Bryce, ball's got to go somewhere. 122 targets as a rookie is fantastic. 10,000. He did not have 10,000 yards. 1,014 yards as a rookie is fantastic. So to me, I do see a path for him to finish in the top 12. I think the top 10 is a stretch, but if I go and pull my own rankings, is there a world where Tet finishes ahead of Nico Collins? Because I have Tet at 13. Yes, there absolutely is. Is there a world where he finishes ahead of Chris Olave in his own division? Possibly. Is there a world where he finishes ahead of Ladd McConkey and Rashee Rice? Possibly. I think it would be hard for me to get him higher than 8 and 7 into that mix, but I think there is a world where he could easily finish ahead of Nico and get into the top 12. So I like Tet. I think we all thought that he would translate to the NFL as pretty much as he did, like we saw. And it's been a good rookie season for him. So we're going to spend a couple minutes. I told you we'd get to him. It is difficult for me with this player because is he a product of his environment? Is the quarterback situation ever going to change? Is this just an abandoned ship? Because at this point, you aren't getting the value in a trade that you drafted him. What the fuck do you do with Garrett Wilson?
He's still my dude. I won't quit, man.
That's the question. It's like, what do you do with? I have Garrett Wilson at 16. You have him at. Where do you have him?
I got him at 10.
You have him at 10. So we're not wildly different, but we're in different tiers there. I have him as a middle of the pack wide receiver 2. You have him as a back end wide receiver 1 in all formats, 10 and 12 teams. So let's start with this. We have no idea who the quarterback's going to be. None. Zero. I mean, it is scary. What bothers me is that there are the rumors that I'm hearing from Schefter and from people who have, I believe, right, that are Pelissero time, guys that are legitimate reporters, is that candidates are pulling out their names from consideration for these jobs, for this offensive coordinator and this defensive coordinator position. That to me says 3 things. Number 1, the situation is bad. Number 2, the roster is bad. Number 3, I think these guys are getting fired. And I don't think anybody wants to go there for a season and move their wife and kids and then be like, oh, just kidding, we're out. When you could go get a spot on Joe Brady's staff in Buffalo, when you could go get a spot in, there's a ton of openings this season, more than I've ever remembered. So let's start at the top. Where do we have Garrett Wilson today in terms of his, you're on the clock, Kendall. He's on the board. You don't know who the quarterback is. Are you pivoting, or are you just saying blindly, I believe in the talent, I'll figure it out with the quarterback later?
That's a tricky one. When I look at, and let's say I'm hamstrung to wide receiver specifically, right? Let's make it tougher for me, right? Do I have a pivot in line that I really like from a safety standpoint? Or do I want to just go for that elite upside? Because I think most people still have him ranked a little bit low. My heart of hearts, I'm probably pulling the trigger because I think I have him higher than basically everybody else. And I'm not saying I have to be right, but I think I get him at a discount when if the Jets are ever good and he's got enough runway, I think he'll do it. I do think I lose a lot of next season to that situation though. And that does put him, into his 26, 27 age season. The year the good quarterbacks come out, and maybe that's a little bit too late. So I will say in this case, I will probably pivot and then look to buy the dip in Garrett Wilson because it's very unfashionable to just stay in the flames with the Jets, right? I think more people are pulling out of these negative situations because the multi-year sink, and I would consider that. But yeah, I would. I wanted to say no. I really wanted to say no, but my new philosophy on Dynasty is there are places I'm willing to take risks, and I do a lot of them. Not in the early rounds in a Dynasty and startup situation. I think the play is to be safer so that the risks have just a better calculated, upside downside situation. I think there's way too much downside with very little room for upside with where I'm projecting him. Where I could even take a much safer situation and say, why don't I just go grab Igbuka, right? And then maybe next year's not amazing, but I do see that by the time Igbuka is the age that Garrett Wilson is now, or even just in 1 year, similar production and safer runway. I would pivot. Yeah.
Let me give you some names. Kyron, Garrett Wilson. Let's say round 3.
Yeah, I'm going Garrett Wilson there.
You didn't like this name earlier, so I'll give it to you again. CMC, Garrett Wilson.
No, I'm sticking Garrett Wilson there.
James Cook.
I'm sticking Garrett Wilson there. I still like Garrett Wilson over him.
Let me give you some names that, because there are people that do this. You and I would both agree don't do this, but there are people that do. Trey McBride, Garrett Wilson.
We get a TEP situation, right?
Let's say half point TEP.
Yeah, I'm going McBride there.
Okay. I assume you were going to go Bowers if you're going McBride there as well.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I have a hard time outside of those two at the tight ends. Those two in my mind are the elite tight ends. I don't believe Sam Laporta is in that. He's not in my rankings. When we do the tight end rankings next week, he is not in that elite tier. So I think there are probably no other guys that I would really want at the tight end position, even in half point. So I'll leave it there. Here's where I'm at with Wilson. It was Zach Wilson in 2024 taking over when Aaron Rodgers blew the Achilles in the third minute of the game or whatever it was, the second series. I believe, and I've always believed this, and Jamie Pirog here in the chat had a great comment, wrong comment. He's been commenting a bunch. Here we go. Talent over situation. So I like Garrett. I agree with him 100%.
Yep.
You and I would say it's a dynasty situation. You should always bet on talent, because what happens like you said, it's a bad year this year. We don't know who the quarterback is, but what if you get that magical quarterback upgrade in 2027, which is a very real possibility? There's been plenty of situations where that has occurred. Could have been
coaching the whole time. We saw what happened with the Bears. If they get a competent, if they happen to have the young good coach that doesn't make them good, but makes them holy shit, they're stable.
Yeah, I
think coaching affects the NFL more than anything, and I think coaching changes should be taken a little more heavily in Dynasty, and they can't get any worse. So yeah,
I think Aaron Glenn is out after this year. I think Woody Johnson is an impatient guy, as most owners are. I think he's impatient, but I don't think that the Jets have a roster. I think Aaron Glenn is in a lose-lose situation. The Jets do not have the roster. What they do have is the picks, because they have traded everything away. They haven't mortgaged a thing. Excuse me. They've gone the opposite way, right? They've acquired and accrued everything, whereas the Colts mortgaged everything, to go and get Sauce. So to me, it's they've got the picks to rebuild this roster, but you've got to get the right picks. You can't draft the next Jamarcus Russell. You have to draft the next Joe Burrow. You can't miss. So they're clearly not taking a quarterback this year. I think, and this is what I want to wrap this Garrett Wilson segment up with you. I think it's going to be Kyler. That's what my gut tells me. Is
Hmm.
that Kyler Murray is a New York Jet as a bridge quarterback for 1 to 2 seasons on a lower contract because they can get him, and I don't think Arizona is going to want him at the end of the day. He hasn't proven it. The Jets need somebody. Who they have in the building right now? I think they got Tyrod Taylor and insert name here. Man? I don't even know if Zach Wilson's on that roster. I don't think he is. I don't even know if Zach Wilson's in the NFL right now. I'm sure he's floating around somewhere. But my point is that you're not getting. What are you going to do? I mean, look at what the Colts did. The Colts went and got Phillip Rivers off the couch. Like literally. This is. I still, at the end of the day, I don't like Kyler. I don't think he's going to be great, but he's better than what's out there. And I think it's the Jets' best opportunity to get some stability for a year or two before they can draft their quarterback of the future, where they can draft it using all these first-round picks that they have over the next 2 years. Linemen, defensive, pass rushers. They can get some pressure on the quarterback. They can get another receiver. I think Brees is going to be there, but you and I have talked about it. What if Brees goes? Because he's still a hot name. We talked about that on the running back show. They didn't want whatever. They didn't want a fourth or whatever for Brees. And I was like, dude, I
think Brees could be a trade during the draft.
I think
like an AJ Brown thing.
100%, right? So that's more picks. May not be a first rounder. It's probably not going to be, but it could be a day 2 pick, a second, third rounder in that range. So there's players that you can get. I think Wilson has been a product of a really, really bad environment. Really bad environment. Where he hasn't had consistent quarterback play. He hasn't had ceiling quarterback play. And it's like, dude, if you could get this fucking kid a quarterback, this is a player who could be a perennial top 5 player at the wide receiver position that we are talking about talent-wise as a tier 1, tier 2 guy that we started the show with. I believe that. I believe he's that good.
I believe it too.
But it is hard to be that good when you don't have a catchable ball, when you don't have an offensive line that can keep your quarterback upright, and when you're losing 100-0 every game because your defense can't stop a leak. So it's a struggle for me to get him higher than where I have him ranked at 16, but that's why I said he's in italics, because it's a product of a terrible environment. So let's hope for good things from the quarterback position, for some stability this year and move forward.
Can I give you an outrageous situation that will never happen, but in my Dynasty a la Madden, tell me how you think this would be fun in real life. Okay. I'm going to throw something crazy at you. The Jets need to tank again, even though they're not a tanking team. They need to tank. Okay. If they tank to get a quarterback in 2027, how do they do that with first round picks? And aren't they going to win just enough games to be outside of that? I don't think so. If they somehow convince the Colts to send them Anthony Richardson with the intention of not winning many football games, but hoping he has an entire season to not give a shit about winning, but to maybe learn. You then have Anthony Richardson going into 2027, maybe a little bit better, healthier, I don't know, competing against pick your favorite rookie. The rookie's probably going to win, but at least you took a shot. And it guaranteed you that you didn't win enough games to get a high-end quarterback. And you go all defense in 2026, essentially, because defense requires less coaching than offense, in my opinion, at least in the modern NFL. If they did something along the lines of that, I would be all in. Jets futures 2027 could be fun. It won't happen, but
it's not that it won't happen. I have a hard time with, first of all, I do think the Jets are going to be in the top 3 next year. They don't have the roster.
Their division's really good too now.
Their division's really good. They don't have the roster. The advantage, if you want to call it that, for those that are listening to the show, I'm doing my air quotes right now. If you're watching the show, you saw me do it. They're going to have a 4th place schedule. So they're going to have winnable games on that schedule. But at the end of the day, I don't think they have the roster to win the games. I don't know that they need. I mean, I agree with you. They need to tank. I know that
no home field advantage.
Well, that is never a home field advantage on that field. It's the ACL, MCL, Terrier, C insert letter before CL here. I think Anthony Richardson's an interesting name. I think Jacoby Brissett is if the Cardinals decide to keep Kyler.
That's my dream situation.
I think Jacoby Brissett is a really interesting name. I'm going to give you one more name, and it is crazy, and it's already happened, which is why I don't think it would happen again, but it's possible because he's about to lose his job on April 29th. Geno Smith.
Interesting.
I mean, the Raiders are. He's on. This is his last year under contract.
Does he
'Cause
get
it was a
another shot?
No, of course not. But you need a bridge. You just need a 1-year deal.
That's interesting.
Gino's got to go somewhere because Mendoza is going to be the number one pick. Whether it's the Raiders or another team that trades up for Mendoza, I don't see a world where Mendoza is not the number one pick in the league because there's so many quarterback needy teams. If it's not the Raiders, someone's going to come up for him.
That's interesting.
The Jets aren't going to mortgage the multiple of first-round picks that they have to go and buy a traded quarterback because they don't have the rest of the roster. If they were a quarterback away, sure, send a couple first-round picks for, Lamar or something. You know what I mean? Like, go buy a quarterback. But like, you don't have the rest of the roster to do it, which is why I think Gino is an interesting name because he's out of a job. Is he going to be a backup in Las Vegas? I mean, he may not have a choice. That may just be you may get what you get, right? Like if you don't get a job, you don't get a job. But I think Jacoby Brissett's an interesting name. I think Gino's an interesting name. Richardson is an interesting name. Kyler's a name. The name that I think would make the most sense, it is in division, which is why it probably won't happen, but the contract kills it, is Tua. There's no way that Tua's a Dolphin after 2 years. There's just no way.
From a business standpoint, you couldn't invest in a product that literally might just like, I don't want to say it, but like, I mean, bad things can happen. You could literally buy him, and by week 2, you need to buy someone else, right? Like that's.
I mean, it's like going to the store and seeing all these nice ripe bananas, and then you see the big brown poopy banana, and you're like, oh, I think I'll buy that one. Like, no, dude, like that one's gonna expire. Tua's not gonna be. The contract negates anything, but I'm saying like there are quarterbacks that Kyler, nobody wants him, big contract. Tua, nobody wants him, big contract, can't get out of it. Deshaun Watson, huge contract, can't get out of it, nobody wants him. So like these are names, like these teams have a quarterback under contract and they still need a quarterback, which is why I think Jacoby Brissett's a really interesting name because there may be a world where they can't, like they're going to cut Kyler. I think that's most likely what is going to happen.
Yeah, I think they should roll out Jacoby Brissett and cut Kyler. I think that happens.
That's 100% what should happen, but you understand the business of and the economics behind the salary cap. You may not be able to. The Broncos did it. They let Russell Wilson go for $97 million in dead cap, and they are laughing all the way to the AFC Championship games. So,
is there a Brees Kyler like with picks and stuff thing?
I mean, I said multiple times last year that I thought Brees could wind up in Arizona.
This is fascinating. I think
I wasn't initially
up in
Arizona
Kyler.
or Houston. I think he winds up in Arizona or Houston. I think those are the two most logical spots. And if I'm Houston, go get Brees because your defense is rock solid.
Oh my God, that's such that I've been.
That is a Super Bowl. That is a
Houston,
Super Bowl defense. And as much as you and I don't love Nico, he's still a good player. He's still a very competent wide receiver one. You've got Jaden Higgins. You've got Christian Kirk. You've got Jalen Noel. CJ Stroud's competent. He's fine. He's not going to be the QB1. He's probably not going to be a top 10 quarterback, but he's good enough to get you to the playoffs. That division's
tight end. Yeah.
Daniel Jones is going to miss the first half of the season. So Colts need a quarterback. Daniel Jones ain't going to be around for the first half of the season. The Titans are going to be better, but they're not going to be great. That's a winnable division if you're Houston. It's basically them in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
This next year.
I keep saying Houston needs all CJ Stroud needs to develop is better instinct and vision, feel for the dump off game. Just to buy, to get, you got to eliminate the bad plays. Get to 0 yards instead of -5 would be fine. Man, Brees would be the absolute perfect player for him. They need the dump off guy, man. This is yeah. Appreciate that, Jamie, by the way, man.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie.
Love having you.
That for
thoughtful comments and good brain on this one.
Yeah, for sure. For those who can't see, Jamie Parog, and I apologize if it's Parog, if I'm butchering your last name, much apologies. But hey, dudes, podcast is solid, but the analysis is the best part. 100, y'all really know your shit, so we appreciate you, man. Appreciate you being here. If you're not liked and subscribed, folks, please jump on. You can see the scrolling marquee on the bottom. Hit that like and subscribe button for us.
It
helps the show. Yeah, helps us continue to grow. We do our mock draft tournament. We've got dynasty analysis. We've got redraft analysis. We've got buy sells. We've got all sorts of content written and live streamed. So yeah, please hit that like and subscribe button. That helps us. Let's talk about two more guys here before we get into the B segment. It's our boy. We love him. I don't think we have enough time to talk about him, but Emeka Egbuka. Look, Evans is probably going to come back. Swan song, right off into the proverbial sunset. I think Godwin comes back. I think he just, if my memory's right, didn't he sign a small extension this year, or is this?
Yeah, because it was weird because he signed the extension, but he wasn't fully healed yet. It wasn't healed at all, and it was like, well, I guess he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was odd, but
So,
yeah.
so here's my question to you, and I need to, before I ask you the question, I just need to pull up, and there it is right there. So, look, it was a phenomenal start to the season. This is a full PPR, 23 points, 12 points, 14, 20, 31. I mean, the first 5, and this kid was on fire. 2, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns in the first 5 weeks. It was an unbelievable start. And then it cooled off a little bit. And then it was typical wide receiver inconsistency, after the bye week, weeks 10 through, I'll say 17, because week 18 doesn't count. Nobody plays. But Godwin came back. Evans came back. Bucky sort of mixed himself in there in the double-digit weeks when he finally got healthy and came back in as well. I wrote this in a parentheses, Kendall, as the question to ask you, because you'll understand when I ask it. If everyone comes back, and that we think that they all will, is this a buy low opportunity on Igbuka? And I say low because you're not getting him cheap, but you're not also paying top of the market, what you would have had to pay to acquire him those first 5 weeks, that first month of the season when he was unacquirable. So do you feel like there's an opportunity to maybe throw out a late first? Does that get it done? A mid first, I think, gets it done. I think that's a fair trade. But could you get him for a late first and get your 3, 4, 5 pick discount? Or is that fool's gold?
Maybe. I think it's too soon to be looking at buying him just because everyone knows what you're trying to do, right? I feel like it tips your hand to the later on. You got to come with it if you're going to trade it, but I don't think it's I don't know if it's a pick. I think it's too early for a pick. The pick has to be real. I think this is during the draft. It's on the clock. You have the pick. You'd have to sell a spicy being hyped up in the fantasy football media, so it's less of a pick and more of the it guy of the moment, right? Lad's pick was becoming more valuable every time someone picked somebody else, right? And Lad was kind of the guy people were overpaying for to some extent. I think you got to wait. Everyone's going to not overvalue him, but I think they're going to overvalue based on his market value in case he just absolutely has a meteoric explosion. Wait until week 3 of the season, week 4. If situation looks like it was the big, last season's ending, basically, I think then you have the ability to, get a decent price for him. Production plus a first, I think you're in good shape. Something like that. Yeah. I don't think you pull the trigger too early. Everyone that drafted him remembers what it was like to own him for that brief sun run, right? I think the truth of the matter is simply the situation's phenomenal. It just got really bad because it was like a workplace where everyone is saying, come on, man, what are we doing at the same time? And no one can wake up, right? And he got some rookie, drops because of it. But when that offense looks like it's supposed to, dude, gonna be just fine. So I think you got to wait. And I think the price on him is still 2 firsts, but you can probably get a second back. But I think that's kind of where the conversation is around.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard because of the age. I think it's hard because whether it's not, if it may not be guaranteed to be this year, but like it will be next year. If it's not in 26, it will be in 27. Evans will be gone. Godwin will be gone.
He'll be really the guy. 23 turning 24.
Exactly. Basically. And I think you and I both, let's not ignore the fact that like you and I both like Jalen McMillan.
Yeah.
He's not an Igbuka talent, but like my point in bringing up Jalen McMillan is I don't think Todd Bowles is the head coach of this team next year if they don't win the division. If they don't make the playoffs, I think Todd Bowles is out as this coach. But I don't think it matters in 27 because if McMillan becomes what we think he can be and what he looks like when he's healthy, I don't think they're drafting a wide receiver. I think they're going after with their first round pick. I think they're looking on the defensive side of the ball, or they're getting an offensive lineman because you've got Bucky, you've got Igbuka, you'll have McMillan. You might have, an older 1 or 2 years left of Chris Godwin if they decide not to release him or to trade him or whatever they end up doing with him. Evans will be the one that is the most likely candidate to not be a Buccaneer in 27. But I just don't see a world where the Buccaneers are going to use their first round or an early second round pick unless there's just a talent too good to pass up. But they need, in my opinion, they need other positions when you watch that team. Yeah. So it's like,
The next Kyle Hamilton that's out there, my goodness, they need to go grab
that
him.
changes games. That changes games. So let's finish up with the rankings here, and then we'll get into the B segment. We don't have time to talk about all these guys, but give me, Kendall, your tier 4 starting at 21, because that is where we left off here. I had Zay Flowers at 21. I know you'll start at 21, but go ahead with your tier 4.
Yeah. So this is my mishmash of I got to figure out what to do with these guys. Chad, I'm not 100% sure here. I have individual takes and I'm all over the board with them, but here we are. Tier 4. Starting at 21, Ricky Pearsall, Jamison Williams, Luther Burden, T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, Travis Hunter, Jalen Waddle, Christian Watson. It's kind of one big group, except that top tier. I could do a mini tier at 25. I would separate Devonta Smith from AJ Brown, and put those other guys sort of an upper half. So it's a pretty crowded tier, but I could kind of miniaturize that a little bit for you.
I have Smith at 17, but anyone that's been a fan of this show for any longer than one episode knows my love for Devonta Smith. So,
dude, he felt blasphemous, by the way. I don't know how I have him this low. I think it's my Jalen Hurts hate right now is costing him, but he's going to go up a little bit for sure.
Well, that's, again, we talked about this about 10 minutes ago. Offensive coordinator job, wide open, like Kevin Patullo. How they've not hired someone after firing somebody that quickly, to me. And now Denver looking for an offensive coordinator. Like, there are jobs that aren't head coaching jobs this season that are high profile, attractive, big market, sexy players to work with, like Eric Bieniemy going back to the Chiefs. Like, there's just been a lot of movement this season.
OC jobs are so much better this year, and we'll put those coaches in positions to get better head coaching jobs in 2 years.
Agreed. So my tier 6, which is 22 through 24 here, Jalen Waddle, AJ Brown, and Marv, which sort of feels like I need to go take a shower, but I think if they could get a competent quarterback in there, the talent for Marv is still there. I don't think he's the generational talent we drafted him to be. I'm sorry if you drafted him at the 101. He didn't burn the pick, but there was better guys in that class that were very
a little more like Ted. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like we both have Roman Neighbors well ahead of Marv, and same class. So BTJ at 25, Luther Burden 26. So we'll get into some of these names here later. Next week, just quick for those that are new and don't know what we're doing. Kendall and I have been going week by week positionally. Next week, we are not going to talk about 12 tight ends. We're probably going to end up talking about 4. But we are actually going to do the tight end show, and then we're going to go through 25 to 36, maybe to 40. We're going to basically do all the wide receivers that didn't make it into our top 24, into our wide receiver 2s. We're going to talk about the wide receiver 3s and those flex wide receivers next week, in addition to the tight ends. So, Kendall, let me do this here. Who makes the biggest leap in the rankings in 2026? Doesn't have to be someone that was in your top 24, but someone that you believe is either someone we've talked about or someone that we should be talking about, who is going to be a big riser in dynasty circles in 26.
Biggest riser. All right, I'm going to give you 2 just because I love this question. And I want to give more risers than fallers just so I'm net positive. I want to put that on the world here. All right. My biggest riser inside the top 24. I can't steal yours. I think I know who you're going to say. I'm not going to say it for sure. You know what? Go ahead and give me screw it. I'm going to do it. It's between Rome and Olave. I think a DJ Morless Bears and fix a Rome getting fixed. He was the wide receiver 4 at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
I see so many reasons with a very good coach and an indelible quarterback connection that Rome should solidly be a top 8 dynasty wide receiver by the end of the season. Maybe that's not a big enough dip, but it's basically having his ranking. I think that's pretty significant. So I'm going to say Rome inside the top 24. Honorable mention to one of the guys I was super spicy on, though. I think Alec Pierce takes a massive jump from wherever he is to wherever he belongs, which is not top 24, but it's darn close. I think he's a real talent. And I think the guys around him are in trouble. So he's gonna jump.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked about other players' names a couple of minutes ago when we were talking about quarterbacks, but I think the DJ Moore contract it's hard for me to see a world where he'd have to be traded.
Mhm.
right? He's got, if my memory's right,
This
he's
take
got,
is entirely on a DJ Moore being gone because DJ Moore is too gone. I would pivot away from that. And I could easily say like you could pretty easily see my because only because you're going to say it on your buy low. I actually am pretty spicy on Zay Flowers having his first real season next year potentially.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest riser, the reason I brought up the DJ Moore contract is because my biggest riser is Luther Burden. I think when you look
I
at
wanted
what
to say it.
I think, well, you can see the show sheet. So yeah, don't steal mine. So
I honestly haven't looked at it once.
all right, fair
Just
enough.
been rolling with it.
Also great. Yeah. But it's interesting, right? Because like I watched the second half of Luther Burden's season pretty closely because I drafted him in the mid to late second round and in my very main dynasty league. We all have that one league we care the most about. I've got a couple leagues with Kendall that I care a heck of a lot about, but Kendall knows this. I've got my main league that is like my baby, right? And I drafted Burden there. And so, I obviously want to pay attention to him because he was just buried to start the season. And he looked good. He passed the eye test and the snap percentage increased and the production increased and he gets himself into the end zone here at the end of the season. And so you look at, people forget Luther Burden coming out for a while was the number one recruit. Had he come out a year earlier, I think he didn't because of that class, right? You've got Neighbors, you got Rome, you got Marv in that class. He wouldn't be able to get higher than the wide receiver 4 off that board, right? So he went back to Missouri. And I think you look at a player like him in a Ben Johnson offense where DJ Moore, he just doesn't, I've never been a DJ Moore fan, that, but like he doesn't look good. Like he had games. I'm not sitting here saying he's a bum and like you don't want him on your team and like bench the guy. Like if he's a good player and he's going to score you fantasy points and win games and like don't have bias. That's one of the major rules of fantasy is try to ignore your bias because at the end of the day, your bias could cost you a win, right? But look at what Ben Johnson is doing. Even if DJ Moore is a Bear for the next year or two, it's a youth movement. Caleb solidified. I don't think there's any way that Caleb goes anywhere. But you've got Colston Loveland. You've got Rome. You've got Luther Burden. You've got young offensive pieces. At some point, Swift will go. They will draft a young running back, and that makes the Bears really scary. But I think you're going to see Luther Burden be the Devontae Adams if you missed out on Puka. If you miss out on Rome in your draft, you can go get another player who has extreme talent in an offense that we like at a discount. And I'm not sitting here saying that Puka is Rome and Devontae Adams is Burden. Of course, that's ridiculous. But it's that comparison of if you miss out on the alpha, the 1A, I think Luther Burden is more of a 1B to Rome and / DJ Moore than people are going to give him credit for. I think they're clearly going to slot him in as the wide receiver 3 on the depth chart. And that's fine. That's where he belongs. But I see a path forward for him where he is the wide receiver 2 on this team on the depth chart by middle to the end of the season, and he becomes more of a 1B in certain situations and certain matchups than Rome does. Give me your biggest faller, somebody that you are either you're not out on, but you might be on the clock and say, you know what, this is my time to pivot to a different position or to a different player at the wide receiver spot.
Biggest faller for me. Man, there's a couple of names here. I am going to go with... Man, someone's just got to like plummet like an actual rocket ship. I hate giving like this negative takes on guys that I kind of like. Wow, this is going to be a little bit brutal. I think the biggest potential is Pickens. I don't predict it, but I do think it has the most meteoric, like this could go bad because of his personality. That does have elevated risk, I think, to it. But I think the better, I'd put Travis Hunter in that category of it could go real sideways. He could not even be ranked by the end of the year. Like the answer is probably Travis Hunter does not barely being an offensive player at all. Like that's a reality with who they signed and who they have right now. My mainstream pick, who I think we already like, but could take a pretty big back seat from there. You've taken a guy that I kind of like, so I can't pick that one a little bit. I'm going to go Nico Collins. He could fall quite a bit only because I see the emergence of 2 wide receivers, not just one. Mm-hmm. And I do think if they ended up getting that Brees move, and if it's not Brees, it's someone else, I think the ecosystem and chemistry of the offense, I hate to say this. I think he could be good, not great. And he could get a little bit of DK Metcalf treatment where you just don't like a guy turning 27, 28, and he starts to get a little bit worse and the young guys start catching up and are a little bit better. I think his target share goes down when Noel moves into the slot a little bit and they get some targets to the running back position. We always talk about vacated targets. I think he has the most like over-targeted, overfed situation that stands to lose 20, 25% of them. I think Nico could go down a little bit.
Yeah. I have a hard time with Nico, but I'm not going to go there tonight. It's Arthur Jawan for me. It's AJ Brown. I just looked it up. His birthday is in June, which means he will be 29 when the next season in 2026 begins. I don't know who the offensive coordinator is. None of us do. At some point, I would assume in the next couple of weeks that will become solidified. But the hot names are still in the mix for the Raiders job, right? They're still in the mix for the Browns job. Like, there's still head coaching jobs that are open. And so I think some of those names could be in the mix for the Eagles job. But look, I really like Kellen Moore. I thought Kellen Moore deserved to be a head coach sooner than he got I thought he should have been a head coach after he left Dallas instead of going to the Eagles, personally. But look, he got a job and rightfully so. But you look, and it's not just, look, I don't want to go through, we can all box score hunt, but like consistency metrics, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks he finished outside of the top 37, and it wasn't even close. Week 1, AJ Brown, wide receiver 100, 1.3 points. Week 2, 72. Week 3, he went in, he screamed and hollered, squeaky wheel gets the grease, wide receiver 3. Right? That was the week they like literally threw him 17 screen passes and he was just lighting it up. Week 4 and 5, wide receiver 98, wide receiver 52. It's not that he's missing the mark. He's goosing you, in essence. He's basically costing you a week. You're getting basically you know what I mean? You're getting nothing out of that position. So I think at the end of the day, a 29-year-old receiver on a team that's already paid Devonta Smith with an aging running back, like the Eagles are, I'm not going to say that their window is closing because I don't think it's closing that quickly, but they're going to have to get younger, and they're going to have to get younger sooner. And if George Pickens wasn't a Cowboy, if he was on any team outside of the NFC East, he would be my name for the Eagles to go out and acquire, because Howie Roseman has shown millions of times he ain't afraid to get a deal done. There's no chance Pickens winds up on the Eagles because of the interdivision trade. But if he was still a Steeler, I think that would be a no-brainer. Get rid of A.J. Brown, get younger with Pickens, pair Pickens and Smith. I know their archetypes a little bit similar, but you know what I mean? Just get that guy. So it's hard for me to get there with A.J. Brown. He's the player for me if I need a wide receiver 2 and there's still a really good running back, or I haven't taken a tight end in my draft. That's probably when I'm pivoting and just letting somebody else ride it out with a 29-year-old. So,
yep.
Mr. VanDerBilt, if you could please give me the old 2 minutes on the clock. Let's do the 2-minute drill.
I really forgot to get that widget. I think I
know we'll figure it out. We got time.
One
season
day
season 8 starting tomorrow, brother.
3, 2, 1, get it.
Tonight's 2-minute drill, as I have done the last couple weeks, I'm going to give you one dynasty wide receiver buy and one sell. I'm going to start with the buy, and it is Mr. Ladd McConkey. Look, it was not a good sophomore season for Ladd. He had 106 targets this season compared to 112 last year, which you really like. He had 7 touchdowns here compared to 6 last year, but the difference was in the total yardage and the catches, his yards per target and his yards per catch. His difference in total yardage, 1,149 yards his rookie season compared to 789 this year, and the catches down from 82 to 66. But the real hit and what really cost you was his yard per target and his yard per catch were down at almost an average of 3 yards in each category. I sold McConkey at the beginning of last season for 2 firsts, and I think you can buy him right now for a single first, and I think it's a mid first. I love that the new OC is Mike McDaniel. Huge is fine, but he's a completely different skill set. I think Keenan probably retires. And look, Trey Harris was barely used, so I still see Ladd as the wide receiver 1 for this group in an offense that we really like moving forward with a Justin Herbert and Mike McDaniel as the play caller. go buy Ladd at a little bit of a discount because of the sophomore slump. My dynasty wide receiver sell is Nico Collins. He has finished the highest in his career 2 separate occasions as the wide receiver 9 is his best fantasy finishes. CJ Stroud's been great at times and absolutely awful at times. I think Jaden Higgins is taking that step forward next season. Nico has a well-documented injury history. To steal a line directly from Kendall, I have him ranked inside my top 12 right now at number 12, but I just can't get him any higher in my rankings. And I see a world where 11 to 15 could easily finish ahead of him, maybe even in that 17, 18 range if everyone were healthy. You can still get a first and a second or an early first straight up right now for Nico Collins, as he is 26 and will turn 27 in March. I'd rather get younger at a running back wide receiver with more upside because I don't see a world where Nico finishes inside the top 5. 14 seconds over, but that was the 2-minute drill. We need someone to sponsor the show, and we need someone to sponsor the 2-minute. It has to be like the 2-minute drill presented by like Head and Shoulders. I mean, we'd never get them, but you know what I mean? Like, it's got to be like 60-second mac and cheese, like heat up your mac and cheese, like Kraft macaroni, like singles. Or, you know what I mean? Like one of those quick, don't have time to cook your kids. Don't have time to cook your kids dinner. Get the 60-second chicken nuggets from Costco. I know something.
We both have kids. Get us the product too, man. This would be fantastic.
I cook for my daughter. I don't sit here and sometimes I heat up the pizza. Let's be honest, but I cook for my kids. So
shoot, we'll do a comedy episode. Shout out to the Spitballers podcast, Fantasy Footballers. You can do both in this. We'll do something. We'll have to figure out. Man, I'm gonna do some late night Googling, figuring out who can I hit up to see about sponsors.
Kendall and I will be back next week, Tuesday, 7:15 Pacific. At the end of this next week, we will have covered all of the positions. Next week's show will be the last of our positional show. We will be covering I say this lightly, the top, we'll call it tier. The top tier tight ends, and we will dive into more wide receivers so that we get a full content show for you all. Kendall, tell the people where they can find you, and let's wrap this thing up, man.
So right now we're gonna start getting into some way too early draft content. So biggest thing I want to tell is just come check us out over at the Get Right Fantasy Network. Evan recently joined the team. He's doing some great stuff. I think we're gonna have draft content 3 or 4 days of the week. Having a lot of good time doing Dynasty rankings with Phil every Tuesday. So it's the best way to get tuned into all the stuff we're doing and hoping to do. We like doing more of this. Sometimes life gets in the way a little bit. We all have day jobs over here. We are not professionals. Would like to be one day possibly, but check out our Discord. I'm sure in the description we can get that for you. Easy to message us on Sleeper as well. Hop in a league with us. But get in the Discord. Really, really easy way to just see what's on our mind, see what's going on in our draft community that's running pretty much 24/7. And you'll get notified when me and Phil are doing a show or when some other guys are. So go check us out.
Sorry, I was messaging Jamie. He's got asking us for an email. I said, go ahead and DM at P Ruskin on Sleeper. Kendall, your handle's too long. KendallTFFT? Is that what? I don't know. That's too much for me.
It doesn't come off the tongue quite so well. We'll get there.
DM at P Ruskin on Sleeper. I will get you guys. Also, by the way, for the show, DM us anything you have fantasy-wise questions. We will always get those answered. You can hop on our Discord channel. We are always checking there, as well as our own personal Sleeper accounts. We've got questions coming in all the time, especially during the season. Start sit questions. Even though we do a show, we don't always get to every single question. So we are always hanging out, trying to do the best we can to get you all the information you need to bring home some rings. Kendall, I had a couple rings show up at my house this week. It's always fun adding some of those championship rings. I know you had a couple rings, I'm assuming, show up as well, because you did. got me in one of our main leagues, unfortunately, right there, Mr. Bijan Robinson, hitting 37 points in week 17, and I had a 31-point lead. So thanks, Bijan, for doing what you do best.
I tried to give you the season, man.
You did.
I gave you Lamar for free. I spotted you Lamar.
You did give me Lamar for free. Yeah, that CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson is one that will haunt you for a minute for sure. We've all made silly trades, but this has been another episode of The Extra Point. We appreciate everybody being here and tuning in. Kendall and I will be back next week. For all of us here at the Get Right Fantasy Network, thanks for joining in. We out. Marking nothing, but I tune every Friday. Strategies provided, I will lock in every
So go